So let's talk about the controversy. In 1990, some of the bilingual teachers proposed a primary language program of the Pueblo students. Now remember, these bilingual teachers were English as a second language teachers, but they were bilingual in the sense of speaking English and speaking Spanish. When that program was proposed, the tribal council reacted really angrily, saying that no outside entity had a right to use their language for any purpose without their consent. Where were these Spanish-speaking teachers getting off by saying that they were going to do a Pueblo language program? Of course, the teachers reacted very hurt. And in a sense, it confirmed their opinion that working with the Pueblo is just too hard. They're just too contentious. It's too difficult to work with the tribes. And they felt that the Pueblo had no right to respond that way because languages do not belong to any particular group. They belong to everybody. And you can see that this clearly misunderstands the entire history of the Pueblo. The Pueblo see Spanish speakers as part of this invading Spanish horde that in fact oppressed them for centuries. Bilingual programs in general, where these teachers were coming from, right? They were English as second language teachers, they were bilingual teachers. Bilingual programs are basically compensatory programs with the purpose of helping children learn academic material as they were acquiring English. So in a sense, they say, you don't know English well enough for us to only teach you in English. So we'll teach you in English and Spanish so that you can learn the material as you're getting better in English. These children are often portrayed as disadvantaged or even handicapped as part of a way to get these programs funded. So in a sense, we say these poor students don't speak English well enough, they don't write English well enough to be effective students. And so this is what is perceived to be a fix for an academic ill. These bilingual programs will teach you in English and in Spanish as you're ramping up your ability to speak English better, right, is a fix for an ill that people have with regards to academics. And most native language teaching has been relegated to this second-class status. So individuals that are taught in their native language are considered to be second-class citizens in the classroom, with English being the first-class citizens. Now, there are specific control issues that come into play, and I'm hoping that you can see the relationship between these control issues and this instance with all of the stuff that Sorrells is talking about in the second chapter, with things like ideology and hegemony and American and Western European hegemony, all of these factors that come into play. So here are the issues. Who can attend these classes, right? The Native Americans, right, the Pueblo, their culture was a culture that had been oppressed and had been attacked and tried to be wiped out for centuries, so that they feel very protective of that culture. Who hires and supervises these teachers? Is this the school district, which is either run by the people of Spanish heritage who were oppressors to them, or people of British or Northern European heritage, which were oppressors to them over centuries? Or is it the Pueblos themselves that are able to hire and supervise the teachers for this program? How are the programs designed? Why are the Pueblo not the ones that are involved in the designing of the program? Why are these Spanish-speaking teachers, these Spanish heritage teachers, and these other individuals of Western European background creating and controlling these programs for the Pueblo? So the Pueblos argued for specific principles. First principle is, why learn the language? That's a very important thing. That there has to be an understanding of why are they learning the language, the Pueblo language. The Pueblo language is taught to be a part of Pueblo culture, and that's always a question to ask. When we talk about principles for learning language, it's a preparation for the future. But what future are we talking about? Is the future controlled by the Pueblo? Is it future controlled by others? there is a certain intrinsic value of language acquisition, but it has to be internal to the Pueblo and their culture. And of course, it has to be appropriate to their culture. So we can see how these factors come into play, right? When we think about these well-meaning individuals who can't understand the historical context of communicating with another culture. And in fact, in this situation, it's not even communicating with the culture, it's actually controlling the language, taking control of the language of the culture and the teaching of the language of the culture when you're not a part of that culture, and how problematic that can be. So hopefully this example works well so you can really kind of get a sense of what these key elements that Sorrells is talking about in Chapter 2. How they affect the world, how they affect communication, and how they affect power and relationships of social justice within intercultural communities.